Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatoria, and this is an unusual video in that there is going to be a prize giveaway. There's a little bit of a competition, so pay attention, watch the review, and at the end I'm going to describe how you could win a full set of Larp Armor, and there are two prizes to win in this. So pay attention and enjoy the review. Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatoria. So obviously on this channel I talk a lot about historical weapons and warfare and history, military history, but something that I've really only mentioned in passing in the past, and indeed I'm not going to talk a huge amount in the future about, is LARP. So I'm very aware that lots of people who watch this channel do LARP, live action role playing, and I've been sent some products to review here by the Night Shop, by the Red Dragon brand. Links below to these incidentally, and these are LARP Armor. Now obviously this is to be used in a sort of fantasy setting, but it is supposed to look armor-ish. It's to help the immersion into the game. Incidentally, in case any of you are wondering, have I ever done any LARP? I did many years ago. I did dabble a little bit in the world of LARP. Right, now on to the actual review. So first of all, what is this? This is plastic armor that is supposed to look like real fantasy armor or historically inspired armor. Let's get it out of the box. So the first thing I'll grab is a helmet. So this is a simulated Spangen helm, I suppose. And we can have a little look at it here. So obviously this is all cast, I think it's polyurethane or maybe something like that, some type of plastic. And it's actually pretty tough. And I have to say, this material, if it was used in HEMA protective gear, would probably actually, certainly if it was used in certain components, would probably actually be strong enough to stand up to quite a lot of abuse. It's flexible, as you can see, so it's got some give to it, but it's also hard. Ow! It's also hard. You could hit that with quite substantial things, and it's not going to break it or bend it or buckle it or anything like that. The straps on the inside are leather, so they're leather and riveted, so it has a kind of look of real armor. And in terms of how it's been painted, that's one thing I should say actually. These are highly customizable. So the way they look here, if you're good at, if you do any type of modeling, model making, or you know, wargaming, stuff like this, if you're adept with a brush or an airbrush or spray, whatever, then indeed you could change the look of this however you wanted. You could make it look more rustic, you could make it look rusty, you could blacken it or whatever, or indeed these kind of plates in between. So what is a Spangen helm? We're going to branch off here. A Spangen helm is a helmet from the early medieval period that is made up of a series of plates, usually or very often, which have a cross rib here, and then they have plates in between and they are riveted together. So this is sort of, although this is a fantasy design, this is sort of inspired by helmets that you might find in the time of Charlemagne or something like that. So, or indeed the Viking era, which is the same thing. Right, so first thing I should mention is these helmets do not come with liners as far as I'm aware. So if I put it on my head, it's you can sit it on my head, but it's not going to sit properly. So you would want to fit, either wear some kind of cap or hat underneath, or fit some type of foam in there, which would probably be the best long-term solution. Just glue some foam pads in there so that it sits at the right height on the head, and you can see it will sit somewhat like that. So you've got a nose protector that comes down some of the way, and then you've got cheek pieces. This incidentally is also quite similar to types of helmet that were in use in the Roman era, and even earlier than well, in the Roman Republican era, and then right the way through the Middle Ages. And types of helmet like this actually eventually give rise to things like the burgonet in the 16th century. So this has got quite a broad period in terms of its basic kind of structure. But in terms of the design, as you see here, it's essentially a Dark Age helmet, so it's kind of Anglo-Saxon Frankish. And perhaps at the earlier end of that, probably more typical of things like the Benty Grange type helmets, so kind of maybe 6th, 7th century, 8th century. 9th century and 10th century, we start to get more into the classical conical type of helmet you see on the Bayeux tapestry with a long nasal and this kind of thing. Anyway, right, let's have a little look at the next piece. So I'll go straight to the next helmet actually. Let's keep it on helmets for now. So this is obviously a much later style of helmet, and you might be quite surprised, I certainly was, at how much like a real helmet this looks. The shaping of this is pretty damn good. So this is a salet. Lots of people making these for reenactment would term this an archer's salet because it doesn't have, it's not particularly big or deep, and it doesn't have any form of visor on the front. That being, and again, it doesn't have any liner in here. This is just one piece, very tough, quite rigid. It's got some flexibility to it, but it's tough. I mean, certainly with LARP weapons, you could get clunked really hard on the head. Not saying that you're supposed to, but you could get clunked really hard on the head with that, and if you've got some padding inside, you wouldn't feel anything. So that is a salet, and again, you've got a chin strap going around here with a nice brass buckle. Actually, a pretty historically accurate brass buckle for the 15th century. And this is a 15th century style of salet, or sallet. And so yeah, it would go like that, and lots of people would term this an archer's salet because it's open-faced. But in fact, I hate that term because yes, whilst archers wore these, so did everyone else. You can, if you look at Filippo Vardi's treatise, he's wearing full armour and fighting with poleaxes, wearing helmets like this. And if you look at Froissart's Chronicles, late 15th century source, you see loads of soldiers of all sorts. Yes, archers, gunners, billmen, every type of polearm wielder you can think of, knights, fully armoured guys, people on horses, people on foot, everybody wore open-faced salets as well as visored salets. Of course, the advantage of this is you don't have a visor in the way. You might think, well, why not have a visor if you can lift it up? But visors do fall down, they get knocked down, they're added weight on the helmet, this kind of thing. So in fact, an open-faced salet could be used by so many different types of soldiers. In terms of the product itself, very nicely made. It's this kind of, I think, polyurethane tough plastic, all cast in one piece. It's got no rough edges, it's all smooth. It's got this nice detailing so it looks like a rolled edge, which you do get on steel armour, of course, to prevent from sort of chafing or impacts from the edge on your own body, just to broaden up the edge and spread that force. Also introduces rigidity around the edge, which, whilst it does that on a steel helmet, it also does that on a plastic helmet. The thick edge gives it a bit more stiffness. And one thing I have to say is the shape of this salet is surprisingly historically accurate. You could, if you were doing 15th century or even 16th century sort of reenactment LARP crossover hybrid, the shape of this is very historically accurate. This is an Italian style salet that has this sweep in at the back. That's a typically kind of Italian feature there rather than the German type of salets. And then it even gets the bulge at the side, so the salets don't just come straight down at the sides, they bulge around the head and then flare out again. They've even got that bulge correct. So I'm not going to say it's 100% historically accurate in shape. Particularly, I would say, well, you do get some with decoration around here. The rivets aren't completely historically accurate, but you could take those off. Remember, this is plastic. You could shape this, you could paint this, you can make it look like one of those painted salets or a covered salet, some were covered with fabric. But the basic shape of that, very historically accurate. And of course, if you're in a fantasy setting, well then that's fine, isn't it? You could be whatever and still have that as a fairly generic high Middle Ages or late Middle Ages helmet. So yeah, pretty good. And it's an interesting contrast to this as well, because that's a kind of early medieval style and that's a late medieval style. And obviously in some fantasy settings, you might find that some civilizations have more of an early medieval look. If we're looking at Lord of the Rings, then it would be something like the Riders of Rohan. They have a more of an early medieval look, whereas the Gondorians have more of a late medieval look. Not saying that these are based on that, but just as an example. So you could have these obviously both in the same LARP that would perhaps represent different nations or civilizations. So as described, these two helmets perhaps represent two periods or civilizations or races, species, whatever. And indeed, they are accompanied by sets of armour which go with each of these and are of a very different design. And each of these, incidentally, are up for grabs in the prize giveaway, which I'll explain a bit more how to win each of these sets in a minute. Right, so first of all, let's have a little look at the more sort of conventional, historically inspired, 15th century kind of inspired armour. So this helmet comes with a set of breastplate, parts of legs, lower arms and shoulders. Obviously, this is not historically a complete suit of armour, but it is enough armour to give an impression for the purposes of LARP of a sort of mostly armoured person, and additionally you could add pieces to it or indeed take pieces away as suits your wishes. So first of all, let's have a look at the cuirass. So this comes in two pieces, a breast and a back plate. So the breastplate, I'll just put the back plate down for a second. The breastplate a little bit wide for me, but obviously being plastic, you can shape it, you can bend it, and it goes over the chest like that. The waist is at approximately the right place. And it goes around there, and obviously the back plate connects on via these leather straps, and they've got buckles, brass buckles. These are riveted to the breastplate, and so that will be your torso armour. And you know, being very light and flexible, you don't really notice it once it's on, but it means a lot of your body has now got armoured coverage. You have got for the shoulders, you've got pauldrons, and the pauldrons have as the historical ones do, a lacing here known as pointing, which goes through the plate here, and you would attach or put holes through whatever your garment you're wearing under this, is some type of gambeson type thing, or arming doublet. That would lace onto whatever you're wearing underneath, so that's where your pauldron goes. And then to keep it close to the arm and not flapping around too much, there's a strap which goes under the arm. That's very, very similar to its historical counterparts, and it's got some detailing which suggests laminations down here, although it is one single cast plate. So there's your shoulders, which obviously go with the breast and back plate. So just show you the back plate quickly, incidentally. There we go. So the back plate, as you can see, goes with the breastplate and forms a completely encasing armour. I should mention, if this was completely the wrong size for you, being plastic, you can trim it down and that kind of thing. It can take a bigger person as well, because the breast and back plate can expand this way, but equally it can contract as well, get smaller. And as I say, you can change where you've got several lots of different holes on the straps there, so it can become a lot smaller as well. And if you wanted to, you could cut down the sides if you were smaller, for example. And then for the arms, you've got, so we've seen the upper arms, you've got the pauldrons there. For the lower arms, you've got these sort of vambraces that go on the forearms. I'll just quickly show those, and they've got leather, nice leather straps and brass. They seem to be, if they're not brass, they're an alloy painted to look like brass, but it's certainly, they look like brass to me, so they look the part. And they would kind of go over, obviously you'd have to wear a long sleeved gambeson or arming doublet, and these would go over there. And then when you buckle them tight, they would come close around the arm like that, like so. And you probably wear some, you have to get some long cuffed leather gloves to go with them, I would suggest. And then for the lower legs, you have a pair of greaves, and I have to say, curiously, these fit me almost perfectly, these greaves actually. I've got quite skinny little legs, but again, being plastic, they can fit larger legs. They don't go fully around the legs, so obviously the size of your leg doesn't actually matter that much, because most of the size variation in people's legs is at the back of the leg and sides, which is behind the greave. The greave just goes on the shin really, and shin guards fit most people fairly universally. Yeah, as I say, because it's plastic, it can bend larger, or it can be done up tighter as needs be. But you probably can't see because it's off camera, but they fit my shins pretty well actually. So what you end up with that set is helmet, breast and back plate, shoulders, lower arms, lower legs. So if you combine that with whatever you wear underneath that, some type of gambeson type garment, you're basically fully armoured at that point. Right, so that's the kind of 15th century inspired fantasy version of historically inspired LARP armor. Let's have a little look at this is now going into full fantasy mode. And I love this stuff. This is like something straight off a cover of a Man of War album. So we've got the helmet. The helmet was fairly conservative, okay? So now think more something like Conan the Barbarian kind of environment, okay? Think of the armor that Conan wears at the end battle at the mound with the burial mound against Thulsa men. Right, so this is full, we're talking hardened leather and skulls now, okay? So first up, let's look at this. Breastplate is awesome. I love it. So there we go. We've got full skulls, and funnily enough, this particular design of breastplate is more adaptable to different sizes and shapes because it's a little bit cut away. It's not quite as covering your whole body as the other breastplate is. But as you can see there, we've got a kind of leather look with a whopping great skull on the front, and I actually love that. You know, at the end of the day, if you're doing fantasy LARP, well, you know, you're not necessarily wanting to look like someone out of history, you're wanting to look like something really exotic. So you've got a simulated mixture of metal and leather or shell or hide or something here, and with a great big skull of don't know what that is, some kind of herbivore, maybe a goat without horns, I don't know, an antelope maybe. So yeah, you've got a breastplate there and you've got the matching back plate, and obviously they go together, they strap over the top of the shoulders and around the sides. I'll just show you quickly the buckles there that they buckle onto. Again, you've got nice brass looking buckles riveted through with genuine leather straps. So it has a look to it. They've really, although this is fantasy, they've got a look of something, certainly for the purposes of a LARP game, looks like real, you know, looks like real stuff. And that's really, really cool. Like the other armour, you've got some pauldrons. These are bigger pauldrons, and you've got a really cool skull on one side with a metal plate on the other. I'll just put this down for a second. So there you go, you've got big pauldrons, and I think they look pretty awesome actually. So you've got a big skull on that one and a metal plate on the other. Obviously, I can't hold these both up at the same time, but that gives quite big protection. So you've got a breast and back plate and shoulder plates, so your whole torso is basically protected. And if the rules you're doing in the LARP game you're doing acknowledge the armor you're wearing, presumably that's going to give you a lot more kind of like whatever hit points or protection points, armor class against hits coming in. And then to finish off with this particular set of armour, you've got Vambraces for the lower arm. Again, these look like they're made of some kind of hardened leather or kind of, I don't know, monster hide with simulated metal plates on them. And then you've got the lower legs, and the Greaves are awesome. I really like the Greaves. Actually, the shape, I just talk about this for a minute. From a historical perspective, they've shaped these Greaves really well. I have seen proper historical replicas made of, you know, steel and bronze, like Bronze Age, ancient Greek period Greaves that are not as well shaped as these. Yes, you've got a skull on there and a simulated metal plate, and this is high fantasy. But actually the shape of these as Greaves is really, really good. You know, if you could get those in bronze of that shape, it would be good for ancient Greek era kind of reenacting basically. And again, you probably can't see my shin because it's probably below the camera, but these fit me pretty damn well. They're comfortable because they're very light. They strap around with leather straps. You've got a lot of holes there and a lot of length, so they can take bigger legs, smaller legs. Obviously they can stretch this way as well, so if you've got great big meaty calves, like Ostwick, or if you've got skinny legs like me, then they squish in. So which, you know, they'll suit different sizes. But they've got a real look to them. And if you want to go high fantasy and you want to do a Conan type character, you know, some kind of barbarian or whatever, then this armor is really, really cool. If you want to do more of a kind of like Kingsguard kind of armor, then the more 15th century kind of historically inspired armor is probably for you. So these two sets, I've got two complete sets here. I've got I'll call it the Conan-ish, the kind of barbarian armor, and I've got the historical-ish armor. And I'm going to give those away because much though I think they're cool, I don't have any use for them for myself. They're brand new out of the box. I've simply unwrapped them to present this review for you. So here is the competition, and this is how you win one of these sets of fantasy armor. What I want you to do is write the beginning of a fantasy story underneath this video in under 200 words. So let's say up to 200 words and including 200 words. So in 200 words or less, it could be 10 words, it could be 50 words, or it could be 200 words. I want you to write the beginning of a fantasy story, and then everybody reading it can give thumbs up to the stories that they think are the best. And at the end of a week, so a week from now, I will come back and I'll look at this video, and the two 200 word or less stories, fantasy stories, that have got the most number of thumbs up will win for free with no costs involved, will win one of these sets of armor. Okay, and I'll ship these out anywhere all over the world. So the two highest scoring or highest number of thumbs up, highest number of liked stories, sub 200 word stories, will get one of these sets. I will communicate with you, I'll get in contact with you through YouTube or somehow. I'll put a video up announcing who the winners are and publishing their 200 word stories on there. And I will ship these armor sets out to you. I'll allocate them like randomly. I'll flip a coin to see who gets which one, that kind of thing. Okay, so hopefully this is really, really good fun. This is something completely different for this channel. It's not something I've done before at all, but I think that this idea has got legs. Clearly, you know, I get sent things to review, and some of these things are completely, you know, safe and easy for me to ship out all over the world. So let's do this. Get writing your stories now. You've got 1 week to submit your story. Remember, of course, that the quicker you write the story, the more time it's going to be there for people to give it thumbs up. So don't wait until the end of the week, because it won't have enough time. It might be the best story in the world, but it won't have enough time to get those thumbs up. Okay, so in 1 week's time, I'll go back, I'll see who's got the most number of thumbs up on their stories. Those two people will each win one of these sets of LARP armor. I hope that's good fun for you. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing your stories. Let's hope we get some. If we don't get any, then I'm keeping this armor. And thanks again to the Night Shop and Red Dragon LARP. Link below if you want to buy this armor or look at the other LARP stuff that they have available. They've got a whole LARP range. That's the Red Dragon brand, and that's at the Night Shop. Go and check out those links below this video now. I'm also aware that some people have been involuntarily unsubscribed from the channel, so please check that you're subscribed. If you're not, please subscribe to the channel. I'm sure if you've enjoyed this video, there are lots more videos that you will enjoy on here. So give us a like and a subscribe. Get writing your stories now. Check out the links below. There's links below to the Night Shop and Red Dragon and this armor, and a whole bunch of other things, including my website and other things. Go and check those out now. Give my my Twitter, follow me on Twitter, follow the page on Facebook, and I'll see you really soon for another video. And I look forward to announcing who won the armor in a week's time. Cheers, folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.